But like I said, my name is Jared Slack. I'm the Director of Relationships and Giving here at the Other Ones Foundation. So my background a little bit is, as I was telling some of you, is my background is I'm a Baptist pastor. I've been a Baptist pastor for, over 18 years. Sometimes it feels way longer than that. I'm 38 years old. I started out doing ministry right out of high school. And but anyways, for me, this role, this position I have at the Other Ones Foundation is really bringing to bear these skills I have as a community organizer, as a person who was trained to, I'm from East Texas. We'll talk about that in a second too. But like my mama always told me, like my mouth would get me into trouble. But the reality is, it's like, I'm very much like our late John Lewis. Like I believe my mouth is going to get me into some good trouble. And using my ability to talk about hard subjects, using my ability to step into the tough spaces. I mean, that's for me, that's what pastoral ministry has always been about. Walking with persons as they are answering the most fundamental questions about their human experience and what am I called to do with what it is that I have been given. And so that's the most fundamental reality of being a pastor is stepping into those spaces. And so for me, the past 18 years, it's been working in these worlds and realms where I'm behind the pulpit and I am talking to a congregation about the hard realities that are happening outside the walls. And then you also have the challenge of, well, how do you talk about these hard issues, but at the same time create positive pathways for engagement for a congregation to not just, and I'm going to use a phrase because I'm going to come back to it, to not just spin your wheels being busy towards no real change. Because what we're seeing a lot in our communities and societies right now, and I saw it up front working as a pastor in a church, is people want to be involved in the hard places. They want to have some sense of understanding and connection to the crises that are happening in our world. But the third thing that happens is that oftentimes our congregations are ill-equipped, but then the pathways that they're connected to aren't really pathways that bring forward change in a community. And so like what I would see at First Baptist a lot, and I mean, and not to say that we've even stopped all of these things, but the things you would see is like, well, there's estimates of around 4,000 to 6,000 persons experiencing homelessness in our city. All right, well, let's have a canned food drive. Okay, let's have a drive to get some more tents. Okay, let's do a winter coat drive or sleeping bags or this, or we'll have a resource fair in our building once a year and persons experiencing homelessness can come and they can get all these basic necessities met. But the challenge is, it's time spent on those efforts. It's money spent on the resources. It's all these things coming together. But at the end of the day, is a congregation able to say that we are participating in the ending of homelessness in our communities? And the hard reality is a lot of times I think what we've settled for, and especially in a community like Austin, is we have settled for making poverty survivable, not actually beatable. And that is one of the most important and fundamental questions we have to ask ourselves. And so I'll step into this and say this. TOO's mission is transitioning Austin's homeless neighbors into engaged community through shelter, opportunity, and support. And for me, I've been here for about 15 months now, and I was brought in for a particular project and for a particular phase of our organization. And I'll get to that in a second too. But at the very basic level, this is our mission. Transitioning Austin's homeless neighbors into an engaged community through shelter, opportunity, and support. But what I want us to begin with is the most fundamental question that we have to ask ourselves. And this is the question: what is required to build a life? And so I want us to sit with that for a second, take some space, and just ask yourself, what is required to build a life? And so hold on to that thought, hold on to that question. I'm going to provide you a metaphor as well. I want you to close your eyes for a second. As you're kind of holding on to this question, is what is required to build a life? And I want you to imagine me. I'm a 38-year-old man now, but I want you to imagine myself when I was 7 years old. You can hear it in my voice. I come from a small town in East Texas called Lufkin. And so I want you to imagine me Imagine a 7-year-old self, Jared Slack, living in Lufkin, Texas. We lived on the outskirts of town. I was lucky. We lived in an area where my grandparents lived and my aunts and uncles all lived. We shared a pasture between all of our houses. And so I want you to imagine country bumpkin Jared, 7 years old. I'm walking out of my house, and what am I doing? I'm going to get on my dad's four-wheeler. And you know exactly what I'm doing as a 7-year-old kid. I'm going to hop on that four-wheeler. I'm going to go out into that back pasture, and I'm going to make a beeline for a mud hole. And over and over and over, this is an image that plays in my mind a lot in my life, because this is an image that's happened in my life a lot as a child. And so I want you to imagine again, this small child back of a four-wheeler finding this mud hole, and you know exactly what I'm doing there. I'm finding that mud hole. I'm getting stuck in the middle of it. Mud's flying everywhere. My wheels are spinning. I'm hitting that throttle as hard as I possibly can, and everything's just flying in the air. I'm having what seems like a good time, but this is what happened over and over again. My dad would be watching from the back porch, or my granddad would be watching from the back porch, or my uncle would be watching from the back porch, or my mom, or whoever it was watching over me. But a lot of times it was my dad. And he would see me out there in that mud hole, and he'd see me, wheels spinning, mud flying, getting nowhere, and he would start waving his hands. And here's where my East Texas accent's about to come on out. Jared, you got to stop, Jared. Jared, you ain't got no traction. Jared, you ain't got no traction. And then he'd come up to me and he'd say, Jared, I could go and get you brand new tires. I could go to the gas station and get more gas, and could fill that four-wheeler up all day long. I could actually go to the store, because I can afford it. I can go to the store and I can get us a brand new four-wheeler, one bigger and badder than this one. But the reality, Jared, is that you ain't got no traction. And so I want us to bring that to place, that when we ask ourselves this question, what is required to build a life? The most basic answer to that question is traction. Traction is what is required to build a life. And so then here's the next question. What creates traction for a life? And so the most basic thing that we begin with at the Other Ones Foundation, if your eyes are closed, you can open them now, is this notion that all persons, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what your skin color is, your economic status, or whatever it might be, every person in this world is a product of their reliable access to three things, and that is shelter, opportunity, and support. And so let's keep this notion of myself at 7 years old. And this is the thing that I tell people a lot. Imagine if together we all designed a time machine, and we were to get to that time machine right now, we hit the buttons, but like, what if this time machine was focused on my life? And so we got in the time machine and we closed our eyes and we just hit the buttons, and we just picked any random day in my life from birth to this very moment right now. But say it's 5, say it's 8, whatever it is. We'd punch those buttons, we'd get out of the time machine, and we would walk up to me at my young age and we'd say, Jared, and we'd bend down and we'd ask the question, Jared, do you have access to shelter, opportunity, and support? And the thing is, look at what's around me here. I'm in my wife's craft room. So knowing that I'm here now at 38, living in my house here in South Austin, got me a nice hefty mortgage, what can you predict about my reliable access to shelter, opportunity, and support when I was 7? And yeah, and feel free to jump in.
Seems like community and family and care and concern, and helping you, being a mentor, those types of things.
Yes, 100%. And so in my life, we'd get out of the time machine and we'd say, Jared, do you have access to shelter, opportunity, and support? I would, of course, be very confused by the question, because at 7 years old, those aren't things that I'm really all that aware of. But we could talk about it. And he'd say, Jared, what's shelter like for you? Oh, well, I live in my parents' house. I got a bedroom. These are all my toys. This is the bathroom that they have for my brother and I. What about opportunity? Well, my mom Makes me take piano lessons. I'm in Boy Scouts. I do T-ball. What about support? Oh, well, I've got a doctor I don't like him much, that poke me. I see a dentist, I do this, all those kinds of things. And so like when you come to me at that age, you ask that question and you would get a litany of responses that would elucidate all of these different reliable, and that's the most important thing to say, reliable access points I have to all of these things. But here's the great question, especially when it comes to something like homelessness. What my point is in saying this is that you can predict at the most earliest stages in a human person's development, you can predict their adult living circumstance. And so what the actual technical term for this is called social determinants of health. And so you could do research, you could look up, you could find, oh, the research would say that if you go to a person at 7 years old and you ask them the question, do you have adequate access to opportunity, shelter, and support? And if there's any pause there, if there's any explanation of how shelter's not great or opportunity is not there, support's not there, there's a predictable pattern there to be able to say that there's a high likelihood that this person will become homeless at some point, because at the most fundamental stages of their development in life, they did not have access to these three things. And the reality is that we are a predictable product of our reliable access to these three things throughout our entire life. And so here's the other examples I can go into. 4 years ago, I had a catastrophic medical emergency. I had to have emergency surgery. I was laid up for about 9 months, unable to work, unable to leave the house, unable to do really much of anything. And the truth is like people go through medical crisis all the time in our world. Maybe some of you in this room have gone through medical crisis. Maybe some of you in this room have lost a job, gone through a catastrophic breakup, had family issues, had a mental health disorder of some sort. Maybe you've experienced addiction to drugs, things like that. But at the same time, you have to ask yourself the question, like, did I become homeless because of those things? No. And many of us know people in our lives who've gone through these things, medical crisis, loss of jobs, things like that. But at no point were those persons ever anywhere near becoming homeless. And the answer and the reason why is because those persons have adequate access to shelter, opportunity, and support. Those three things make up a person's ability to weather whatever crisis they experience in life. And so what we're seeing, like, the common notion that person's experiencing homelessness, or I've seen it on Facebook where people will say like, man, we're all just one job loss away. No, we're not. We are all not one job loss away from homelessness. There are some in this world who are one job loss away, one medical crisis away, one mental health disorder, one bad something away from being homeless. And so the point of the matter is what TOOF is trying to put into the world is that the way you actually address and end homelessness is not through addressing the symptoms of it. Oh, your tent is falling down. Here's a new one. Oh, you don't have adequate access to food. Here is some canned goods. Oh, you don't have all these different things. The answer is to provide and offer reliable access to persons who are experiencing homelessness, offer them access to shelter, opportunity, and support. And a lot of what we're seeing in our community is that our organizations, nonprofits, state, city, they're not doing this work. They're only offering maybe one. So 5 years ago, my organization began with a program called Workforce First. Workforce First is a low barrier work program where individuals are offered the opportunity to be of service to the community as an alternative to panhandling. And the important thing to start here to talk about the Others Foundation is because I believe it presents a really important question as well, especially in Austin, but this is happening everywhere. But we saw it with Proposition B, with the vote that happened there. And the question that's being presented to us as a community here in Austin is this: are persons experiencing homelessness in Austin, are they barriers to our experience of the kind of community we want, or are they co-creators in the process? And what we see happening in our community is notions that persons experiencing homelessness are the thing that is standing in our way to have the kind of Austin that we all want. Because it's true. Like, if we were to go to every single person in Austin, ask them the question, do you think it's okay that persons are living outside in your city? 100%, well, maybe not 100%, 99% across the board, you would hear a person say, yeah, no, it's evil. People shouldn't have to live outside. Like, this is Austin, Texas. We are one of the most innovative towns in the world. Elon Musk is saying we're a boom town. The reality is like, nobody wants to see persons experiencing homelessness. Nobody wants to see the realities of this kind of suffering. But the question that's presented in that is whether or not they're barriers or if they can be co-creators. Because what happens to barriers? You move them out of the way. And that's exactly what Proposition B was. Not to say that the desire to say that camping should be not something that's allowed in our community, but the question being, like, the way it's operating is like, we want to remove the tents, and that is how you treat barriers. You don't worry about the person in those tents. You just want them out of sight, out of mind. I don't want to step over them as I leave my apartment complex. I don't care where they go. I just don't want them here. But that doesn't do anything to end homelessness. It just moves it around. So what we're pushing forward into the world with this Workforce First program, and it's just the very first thing that we did, is this notion that you can create positive pathways to engage with our friends who are experiencing homelessness in such a way that they begin to offer themselves in service to the community. This is a very different pathway. And so offering these on-ramps to do things in service of the community. And so what happens is this Workforce First program now is a contract with the city of Austin. And so the way this works is the city, has green spaces, parks, watersheds, all these things that they have to take care of. This is their responsibility. This is their property. We pay them taxes to make that happen. And so they could go out and hire a for-profit company to go out and pick up trash, clean up these green spaces. But we've convinced them that the better route is to contract with us using our already set up outreach programs, our supportive network of people, our connections with agencies. Can we create pathways for these persons that are experiencing homelessness to join our teams? They'll get paid a dignified wage of $15 cash per hour, but they're also being matched up with case management, housing navigation services, workforce development, life skills training, job placement, mental health care, drug use disorder service, stuff like that, medical care, things like that. What's crazy is this, and I forgot to put the slide in here, but what's crazy is this. In the past 5 years, we've paid out, and this is nuts, we've paid out over $1.4 million of dignified income to persons who are currently experiencing homelessness. We've cleaned up over 1.6 million pounds of trash from the city of Austin. We've housed over 175 persons from our program, and we've connected over 300 persons to employment. And the reality of it is this is a partnership that is saving the city of Austin $1 million annually. And so all of this return on an investment that actually saves our community money, that partners with persons who are currently experiencing homelessness, offers them the ability to have a dignified job working alongside persons who are in their same experience, but together they're seeing what they can accomplish. And so this program keeps getting renewed, it keeps getting expanded. It's become a prototype for programs across the nation. It's become a thing that now is kind of, in many ways, the life force of how our organization operates. This notion of coming alongside our neighbors and just believing with them that you are a partner, you are a co-creator. But most importantly, and this leads to the next point, this is about providing opportunities for persons to experience themselves finally as a neighbor. Instead of something to be despised, instead of a person to be pushed aside, a person who is a neighbor. And neighbors are engaged in community, they contribute to community, but they also receive from community. So the next thing that we're kind of on, and this is kind of the bigger thing that we're going to talk about today. So like I said, we've been around for about 5 years now, but and again, a lot of this is longer stories, and you can find a lot of information about the Esperanza community, but just by Googling, you can find stories on the news about how this place came into being. But suffice it to say, the Esperanza community it's been around for about 2 years now. This is not the original name of it. It was originally kind of called Camp Abbott. People were calling it Camp Rat or Abbottville, but this is state-owned property. This is a 7-acre abandoned truck depot over in East Austin, right on the edge of the Montopolis neighborhood. It was started about 2 years ago. Very quickly, just to say this, it was started 2 years ago by Governor Abbott, kind of in one of these moments that we've all seen over and over where the city of Austin, their leadership and state leadership just weren't getting along. And so the governor opened up this place kind of in a response to a lot of things that happened. But like I said, it's a 7-acre abandoned truck depot. And so these pictures are showing, and I don't like to show a lot of pictures of the place as we found it, because this is where people were living. And this is state-owned land. This is 7 acres of asphalt. There was no running water on site. There's no electricity that you can adequately access. So amongst all those tents, you have, thousands of feet of electrical cords daisy chained together as people tried to have some access to electricity. There's no flushing toilets. So I'll just rattle it off. And this is to the point here, and why I think and I don't bring this up because I just want to talk bad about this situation, but I think it's an important thing to put a pin in the realities that we're seeing around waste when it comes to serving and trying to do something about homelessness in our city. And so this is a 7-acre property owned by the state of Texas. It's been open for about 2 years now. The first year of its operation, we were not involved. The state of Texas just opened the doors. They said, this is a sanctioned encampment for the homeless, meaning if you can come on site, we'll put some lines on the ground and you can set up a tent. And then the state of Texas offered 3 things on this site. And the truth of it is, it's the state of Texas. What else are they going to do? That's what I want to be clear about. It's the state of Texas. What else can they do? They did 3 things. They provided rations on site 3 times a day. These are, prepackaged meals, lots of trash to go with them. It's about 1,300 calories every day. You got to drink the hot milk. You got to eat the cold, whatever, the previously frozen sandwich and the apple and the juice and all those things. So they're providing that 2 times a day. That's a good thing. It's rations, it's food. People need food. The second thing they were offering is they had 24/7 DPS officers on site. Those persons are not local. They were staying in hotels. They were getting paid time and a half. But you had those individuals here, 2 of them at a time, for the most part, on site, offering some sort modicum of security. And then also with the rations, you have the Texas Department of Emergency Management Services, which, if you're familiar with these agencies, this is for natural disasters. This is for floods, hurricanes, snow apocalypse, those kinds of things. But they've been deployed on site of a homeless encampment for the past year. And then the third thing is porta potties. And so the state of Texas currently in the past 18 months, the state of Texas was spending close to $45,000 a month just on porta potties. You're talking around $500,000 to $600,000 on just porta potties. And I'll just cut to the chase. I have a donor who's putting in sewage for $80,000. And so the reality of it is you see that the state of Texas is just not the right appropriate fit for this kind of thing. And the reality is so this is a sanctioned encampment too, and we'll talk about that for a second. You see this happening a lot in localities and cities where, what do we do with the homeless people all over the place? Well, let's create a sanctioned encampment. What I would say to that is back to SOS, shelter, opportunity, and support. These 3 things create traction for a person's life. And so if you bring that notion to a sanctioned encampment for the homeless, is a sanctioned encampment the kind of place where a person can get the traction they need to move on into a better life? And the answer to that is no. These sanctioned encampments, with their inadequate access to water, inadequate access to hygiene facilities, the fact that people are living outside on this property in particular, living outside on top of asphalt, these become places, and this is going to be very crass, but I just have to be very honest. This is a trash can for humans. This is a place that gets filled up. No one leaves. No one's able to come here, get their life together, and move on. They come here, and it's a disaster. It's apocalyptic in realities. This is a place where people experience extreme amounts of suffering. Persons die here from heat stroke. People freeze during the winter. There's rats everywhere. I mean, this is not the kind of place. If we want to say that we're the kind of community that wants to actually end homelessness, in the sense of that persons currently experiencing homelessness now can transition, can find some traction and work towards being housed, being employed, This ain't it. This will not accomplish that mission. And the reality is that there's 4,000, 6,000 people. This thing maxes out at 200. How many more of these things will a community like this need to just be able to find a place for people? But then the reality is it means that our city is going to have to operate trash cans, operate places where we just have to close our eyes and take a blind look at the reality that people are suffering and that people will never be able to work towards the thing that I know that every single one of us in our community want for people. We want and hope for people to be housed. We want and hope for people to live in community. We want persons to be stable. And most importantly, and this is where I'm coming from, and I believe this is where you're coming from, we want people to experience themselves as they are designed. We are meant for meaning. We are meant for community. We are meant to experience ourselves as a neighbor. And to me, that is gospel through and through and through. This notion that each and every single person in this world, no matter where they're coming from, no matter what their situation or circumstance, is designed to reflect the divine in this world. That's the design. And so in many ways, a project like what we're going under here with the Esperanza community is that we are transitioning this community into a place that offers stability in the midst of crisis. You know, a stable stepping stone out of crisis into stability. So what you're looking at here, this is a above ground, a big drone shot of the current, well, this is about 2 months ago or a month ago, of what the community looked like. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Nope, I'm not. What you'll see, that's the above ground of the property. If you can see my cursor a little bit, these are tents on the top. You have a median of tents on the bottom, and then you have tents across down the middle, and you have more tents on the bottom. And this is like, just like that picture you saw at the beginning, this is the ground level of it. This is what it looks like from above. And what about time? Yeah, I want to go ahead and show you this video, this announcement.
Should we be hearing something?
Yes, you are.
No,
Is it not playing on there for you guys?
You can't hear it.
Okay, no worries. I'll send the video to you guys and you can see it. But I want to show you, so like, this is what the community looks like now. This is where we're going. Here. Sorry. So this is the Esperanza community. So as you saw with that other slide, you saw that there are currently tents and things like that kind of covering the property. But where we're going now, and I'm excited to tell you that we broke ground on this property 3 weeks ago. But we are building a transitional shelter complex. And so the design of this is that it's going to be 4 neighborhood blocks, each with, and this is very important, 50 transitional housing units. And so much of what we do, everything we do at the Otherlands Foundation, is very much based in listening. It's based in this listening to persons in their experiences. And so when we came on site, what we did about 14 months ago is we petitioned with the state of Texas. We asked for a right of entry on the property. Pretty much we just said, treat us like homeless people, just let us on the property. We're going to do some ask some questions of the residents and do some assessments of what their needs are. And so 14 months ago, we came on site. We landed a large modular building. You saw that. That's in one of those images that I showed you. We landed a large modular building, moved my entire staff out there, our case managers, executive team, everybody. And we devised an approach. At first, it was just to offer humanitarian services. We landed a shower trailer. We started doing better food access, offering mental health services, medical care. We have a medical clinic on site now, all those things. But it became very quickly clear that there is another potential approach here. So we petitioned the state of Texas again, and we said, listen, you have a problem on your hands. Either you do better by this because it's a disaster and people are going to find out what's going on here, or you find somebody who can do something about this, can actually take this project and make it better. Because the reality is the state's in a tough position, especially with a sanctioned encampment. With any sanctioned encampment, the only end of sanctioned encampments is removing all of the people and shutting the place down. And so the state could choose to do that. They could choose to come and be like, all right, never mind, this isn't a sanctioned encampment anymore, and they could shut the doors and kick everybody out. But that would be a massive problem for them. So we petitioned with the state of Texas. They've given us a long-term lease on this property. We broke ground on it about 3 weeks ago, and what we're creating is a transitional shelter complex that's got 200 shelter units. And the notion being, this is meant to be in stark contrast to traditional shelters that we see all over our nation. Traditional shelters meaning they're congregant. They're based in gender, men on one side, women on the other. We know that leaves many persons out in that equation. Persons in partnerships can't stay together. You can't have a pet. You're also living in bunk beds, surrounded by persons who are also struggling. The reality is that persons are assaulted, people get stolen from in these places, drug use disorders are only amplified in these places. And so what we have put together here and what we are bringing forward is a transitional shelter community where every person is offered an individualized, stable place to live. And so what I want to be clear about is this is what we're creating. This community is this. It is a place where all persons are offered shelter, opportunity, and support. So you see these 200 units here. We also have Workforce First on this site. So you see site services. There's also going to be support work. There's going to be community offices, healthcare, laundry, temperature rest stations, food access, dignified food access. No more rations, no more prepackaged meals. It's going to be food cooked and served and healthy. And then on site too, we have Workforce First opportunities. You can kind of see all these icons that are developing over the site, where there's mechanics, dog grooming, gardens, a library, medical clinic, counseling centers, things like that. But all of these things being supported by residents who are living in the community. And so this is a close-up look at one of the neighborhoods. And what's amazing here, and I know I'm running out of time, I want to quickly tell you this story because this is what's important. Another thing that's important about this project. What we see happening, especially in homelessness all over the world, is that homelessness exists in this place where there's just a void of innovation. Nobody's thinking differently. Nobody is applying technology and innovation from other industries into this field. And so it's just a bunch of do-gooder social workers scratching their heads and trying to figure this out. But this is where the power comes for an organization like the Other Ones Foundation. This is the work that I do, because my work is to connect our mission to people in this world who have a capacity and ability to do something about it. And so that can mean a donor who is able to offer $1,000 a year or whatever, but it's also people who are able to do miraculous and change-making things. So about 10 months ago, when we started floating this notion of we want to build a community, a shelter community with 200 individualized units, we got a lot of press came out and was kind of talking with us about it. This idea was really exciting, especially for a city like Austin. And then what do you know? A gentleman by the name of Tito Beverage reached out to us. This is the guy behind Tito's Vodka. Comes out on site. He wants to see what we're doing. He wants to hear our vision, hear our mission. What is it that we're doing that's different than everybody else out there in the world? What is it that we're bringing forward that actually has a potential to actually bring change, to actually have a return on all this investment that people are putting into homelessness? And so the crazy thing is this, and again, I'm trying to be fast about it. 15 years ago, they were in a conversation at Tito's production, their production team, and they were having a hard time getting the stickers to stay on the bottles, which is a thing that happens whenever you're bottling up vodka, right? Especially in Texas because it gets hot. So it slowed down production. And in that moment, they do what every industry does in this field. They pursued a technology to help them mitigate this challenge. And so they pursued a technology called structured insulated panels. In essence, you should just imagine an ice cream sandwich. It's aluminum siding on the outside, 3 to 4 inches of industrial foam in the middle, and then aluminum siding on the inside. There's no wood in the factories that Tito's building. There's even no steel frames. They are using these structured insulated panels to build these, they just built the largest vodka distillery in North America, not 10 miles outside of town. And so this is what happened. Tito comes through, sees what we're doing. We tell him this notion of creating individualized shelters. And then Tito leaves and says, I'll get back to you. And then 3 weeks later, Tito sends us a video of the very first prototype of what you're seeing on this image now, but the very first prototype of what is called Tito's Dura shelter. And this shelter is built out of the same technology that Tito uses to build his distilleries. And so the amazing thing is these shelters that you're looking at right now are electrified. They have lockable doors, but they last 50 years. And a lot of times you see, especially, again, back to what we talk about with homeless services, typically what we're offering persons experiencing homelessness is a tent or some sort of structure that's going to last maybe a year or 2 years, but it's going to have a lot of upkeep for it. But what would happen for a person if you can create a dignified place that is durable and safe, a place where they can lock their door at night and not worry about people messing with them, a place where they can leave their belongings and go to work or go to a case management meeting? Or it can be hot outside and they can come inside and be cool, or it can be cold outside and they can come inside and be warm. What these units offer, and this is the line that we say, these are stable stepping stones, reliable stepping stones out of crisis and into stability. The whole notion of how we're designing this community is that we want it to project a vision of human thriving. We're creating a place where a person can actually experience themselves as a neighbor. And why is that important? And finally, this is my last most important point. We are offering people a space to experience themselves as neighbor, even in the midst of their technical homelessness. Because the reality is, and this is where this community also is serving, it's also serving a community as in it's a transitional shelter complex for persons who are currently experiencing homelessness, but this community is designed to prepare persons for the opportunity of having a stable place to live. Because this is what we see are happening again in our city, and this is where the city is doing some things that I personally don't agree with. They have this notion of, oh, we'll just go and take people who are homeless and put them into hotels or put them into an apartment. But the reality is the traumas and challenges and suffering points of persons who are experiencing homelessness, they don't just fall away once a person has an apartment to live in or once they have a hotel to stay in. Those traumas and challenges go with the person, and they stay with the person until they are addressed and worked with. And so the promise of a community like ours is it creates the capacity and space for a person who is currently homeless to have an experience of stability, to really address those crisis points, those destabilizing points. So that way, when the opportunity comes, like at a Mobile Loaves and Fishes Community First Village, or Foundation Communities, or an affordable apartment complex, or that supportive housing authority place, that the person who's been in our programs is already taking with them those necessary skills to become community builders wherever it is that they go. That is what this is about. That is how you end homelessness in our communities. You create pathways for persons to experience themselves as a community builder, have adequate access to those resources to experience themselves like that, and then you find that a person's life can be transformed. And that when we're seeing this right now, our organization has the very first pipeline partnership with Mobile Loaves and Fishes, in the sense of that they trust the work we do with our clients, and they put our clients as priority for persons to be in their community. Because over and over and over, we're seeing that our clients leave from our community, go into MLF, and they're just knocking it out of the park. And It's just kind of the way things work. So yeah, this is the Esperanza community. This is kind of where we're going right now. This is the biggest project that we're working on. But anyways, I know I'm short on time, but I want to give you guys some space to ask questions and clarity, things like that.
What kind of help do you need the most?
Yeah, I mean, as always, it's financial. And so, we have our Welcome In campaign that's running right now. I'll say this, we've been really blown away by our community support. And so kind of looking at this map you have right now, I thought I had that picture. I guess I couldn't have uploaded it. But where we are right now, and like I said, we broke ground 3 weeks ago, and we've been really overwhelmed by how good the support's been. But we are now in a position where, if you're able to look at this image and see my cursor, but the neighborhoods that are there at the center, we have now transitioned half of the residents on site. We call them community members. We've now transitioned half the community members on our site. They're now living in hotels, but they're with our case managers. They're still part of our programming. And I didn't really bring this up. The challenge is there are 200 people living on the site, and we have to do development on it. So we've had to do some shifting. This isn't the field of dreams. We aren't building it and then they'll come. They are already here. And so half of the site now has been cleared of tents and those community members who are now in hotels. But then these past 3 weeks, we've dug infrastructure. So now we have the state of Texas who's building our road, and putting in sewage, putting in electricity, putting in communications and all those kinds of things. So we are in phase 1 of the project now. We are anticipating being done with the first 100 shelters, plugged in, ready to go, operating with persons living in them by mid-spring.
What's the cost of say one of these structures?
Yes,
ballpark.
100%. Yeah, and I'll follow up with an email that I can show you that has a website on all this stuff, and then that video that you guys couldn't hear the sound that's on that page too. But we're running a campaign called the Welcome In campaign. And what we're doing is, for each of the shelter units themselves, the Tito units, we are offering annual sponsorships for $10,000. What that does is it operates that shelter at an individual level for an entire year. So whatever community member is living in that shelter, with that funding, they have access to work opportunity, supportive services, and shelter. It covers the whole thing.
Just expand on that. What would one structure cost? You're just curious.
Yeah. Oh, the actual price of the structure being built is $6,000.
Wow.
It's crazy. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, yes, I'm glad you asked that question, because it's a really important point. You look at it right now, research says that a person experiencing homelessness goes through 5 tents per year. 5. What if the average cost of that tent is $125? That's $700 a year. Bam. That thing ain't, and those things are getting every single year. It's costing that much of money. So that is close to $7,000 in 10 years. This is a $6,000 unit that lasts 50. And you don't have the constant upkeep challenge that the person living in it. Like, the reality is these shelters, they cost $6,000 all in. But the reality is my goodness, they mitigate so many traumas and challenges that a person faces.
How close are you to, how long do you expect this to take you to build this?
We're looking at 18 months. Because we'll do the first phasing, be done with the first phasing mid-spring, and then we'll do the next process on the next 2 phases. In all, it's got about 5 to 6 phases to it. 4 phases with the 4 neighborhoods. There's also here, this building, this is another thing to talk about for a second too. The property has really great bones. And so this building you're looking at right now is actually an existing building on the property. It just doesn't look this good. It's an old industrial warehouse that they could pull trucks in to work on. But what do you know? There's no asbestos in it. And so we can renovate that thing. We already have an organization called Homemade Austin that is partnering with us on this renovation. That'll probably start sometime mid to late spring, but that's going to take about a year to do that.
What are the qualifications for moving in and that type of thing?
Yeah, so everything we do is low barrier. So we offer, as long as we have space, it's for anyone who's experiencing homelessness. Now, there are program agreements to be part of the community, and this is all focused on neighborliness and community safety and things like that. So no requirements as far as like being able to apply. You don't have to have like an ID or have a stable job or whatever it is. This is low barrier. If you're experiencing homelessness, this is a place for you. But along those lines, this is designed to be a place for persons to experience neighborliness. And so there are agreements that have to be put into place for that to happen. And so our organization already has program agreements in play with some of our residents that are living on site. And it's these program agreements that we use to kind of, if you notice, I'm trying to dance around punitive language. We don't really do punitive stuff on site because for the most part, that's how persons experiencing homelessness experience their entire life. It's all punitive. Sir, get up or I'm going to write you a ticket. Sir or madam, move your tent or you're going to jail or whatever it is. But I'll say this too, we have a security team on site. They're called community service officers. Now we have 24/7 coverage with persons who are trauma-informed care. We have a really great relationship with Austin Police Department, and they're very supportive of the work we do, but also they understand that we are creating a community of safety and a place for persons experiencing homelessness to get the help they need to work towards a more, sustainable life. And so that, so we do the best we can. But yeah, does that kind of answer your question there? And then as far as like kind of continue on that too, like our guidelines as far as program participation, like we don't put limitations on how long persons can be in our programs because the experience of homelessness is so diverse. And so like the reality is, maybe we put like a 6-month cap on somebody's time there, but then some people will come in and they only need it for 2 months. I see this all the time. Persons, especially in the whole range of experience of homelessness, some people who are newly homeless, just lost their apartment because of COVID. Well, we can work with a person like that. And in 2 months, we can get you first and last month's rent, through our workforce source program, and you're right back into an apartment. But then you come across people who've been homeless for 20 years, 10 years. I've been in the penal system forever and ever and ever. It's going to take a lot longer for that person to transition.
Great. Anyway, we want to thank you so much for being with us today, and also just for the work that you're doing.
100%.
Really inspiring to us. We should probably transition at this point into meeting for worship. Yeah. We really appreciate your work today.
Thank you so much. And I'll leave my screen up there. You can take down my email. If you have any questions, absolutely 100%, please reach out to me. I would love to have a conversation with you. And yeah, and if you're the kind of person who wants to offer some resources and support to our organization as we bring about this really important thing, yes, please reach out to me. I would love to take you to coffee, or even if you guys would like to put together a visit out to our community, I'd love to show you around. We're doing some incredible things. All right, you guys have a great time in worship. May the Lord be with you, and may you experience the fullness of the presence of the one who holds us together and brings us new life. Have a great day.
You're invited to stay if you have time.
Thank you so much.